And welcome to ABC News. I'm Gemma Vaness. Nationals MP George Christensen has thrown his support behind embattled party leader Barnaby Joyce. He says Mr Joyce has the support of the party room and the coalition's poor news poll figures has nothing to do with friction between the Liberals and Nationals. When asked about the public spat between the Prime Minister and Mr Joyce, Mr Christensen says time heals all wounds.
Since I actually got back to my electorate on Friday, I've had a lot of people that have raised that issue about the Barnaby Joyce and the ongoing media storm around his personal situation, and by and large the response has been that he's done nothing wrong, it's a personal issue, and people should just get off his back.
Does he have the party room support to hang on?
He's got my support, and I believe he has the party room support.
What do you think of Turnbull's new laws with the cabinet not members of the government not being able to have relationships with their staff?
Well, look, I think it's certainly an interesting time when we're regulating interpersonal relationships between grown adults. But anyway, that's what the Prime Minister decided, and that's what we'll have to abide by. I certainly don't engage in any of those relationships with my staff members, and they're probably very glad for it.
The government slipped behind in the polls. How much do you think of that is due to Barnaby?
The government's been behind in the polls for a long time, and as we always say, the only poll that really matters is the one on election day, and there's a long time between now and election day. It's not due until next year.
Do you still support Mr Joyce?
Oh, absolutely, 100% I support Barnaby Joyce.
Tough time for the National Party right now, with Barnaby and this thing that's just happened on the weekend. There's a lot of talk about split between the LNP and friction between the two parties in the coalition. What do you say to that?
No, look, I think that time heals all wounds, I guess, and a week's a long time in politics, so it'll be interesting next week whether we'll be into another news cycle. I mean, today it's about a joke on social media. I mean, what's it going to be tomorrow? The press gallery, I guess, will determine what the issue of the day is tomorrow and next week, and we'll be into another story then.
Well, Veterans Affairs Minister Michael McCormack is the Nationals MP most likely to replace Barnaby Joyce if there is a leadership change. He says Mr Joyce has the support of his party for now.
Well, there's no vacancy at the moment. There's no spill. National Party members are getting on with doing what we do best, and that's looking after the interests of rural and regional Australians. And whether that's in Wagga Wagga in my hometown, whether that's in the Northern Territory with the CLP, or wherever it is, National Party members and members of the government, the Liberal Nationals, are focused on delivering jobs. They're the important things that people tell me. They're not really worried about titillating aspects of what might or might not have occurred and salacious stories that are being printed in the media. What they're focused on is making sure that their kids have a job, making sure that their education and health outcomes for the future, and that's what the National Party are about. We're about outcomes, and Barnaby has been a very good leader.
Meanwhile, the opposition continues its attack on the government over the Deputy Prime Minister's position. Bill Shorten said that a Labor government would not overturn the PM's staff sex ban. And he insisted the main issue in the Joyce affair still needs to be addressed. It's one of conflict of interest.
If I was Prime Minister, Barnaby Joyce would already been sacked as Deputy Prime Minister. What we're seeing is Barnaby Joyce, in my opinion, breaching the ministerial code of conduct. But what's even worse than that is we've got a Prime Minister, Malcolm Turnbull, who's too weak to actually sack him. Malcolm Turnbull has now become a figure of some derision. He says, I'm the Prime Minister, but don't expect me to do anything about my cabinet ministers. He said today on radio that maybe the National Party will get rid of him, maybe they won't. Well, we don't need Malcolm MIA Turnbull missing in action. He needs to step up here. I mean, people think that politicians all too often are in it for themselves, but the real scandal here is that the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister are only worried about their own jobs, not about Australian jobs. We saw last week Mr Turnbull blow his stack at Barnaby Joyce, but it's very clear Mr Turnbull had a fair idea what's been going on for months, but now Mr Turnbull's feeling a bit of electoral pressure. Then he's decided that what he knew before now becomes a scandal. What I want to just say on Mr Turnbull's changes to the Code of Conduct is, if we get elected, we're not going to overturn them. But it's not the main game, is it? The real issue here is not the relationship, it's the conflict of interest. It's the very poor decisions made. It's the conflict of interest. I mean, this might surprise you, but I actually thought that Julie Bishop from London made some sense this morning. She said there is a role for private lives, for politicians to have private lives. She said she'll make a go of this code of conduct, so will Labor.